Thanks so much. How is everyone doing today? Sorry, I'll let you answer. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very excited. I'm a little nervous to go first. We have some amazing speakers here, and we're here to listen to stories. And stories are a bit of my bread and butter. I love them. I am fascinated by stories. Hearing people's stories is my favorite thing, so much so that I have made it a career. Starting, as Tosca mentioned, in the theater, then moving on to in China, becoming an adapter of a Chinese kids show for a Western market. Now working as a communications coaching students, working on their presentation, getting these design students across the finish line to effectively communicate what they've made to the right audience, to the right people. And the most fun that I have is with Shenzhen Stories, as was mentioned. And this little baby is a little over 2 years old, but we started it in a very small coffee shop in Jingshan in a December of 2016. And it's grown. It's been amazing to watch that community grow and the connections be made and the connections be deepened. And so when I say I love stories, I mean I love your story. And I've had a long time to be a part of a lot of different stories. Stories that belong to me, stories that belong to other people, fictional stories, true stories. But I have helped be a part of telling these stories for a long time. And so I often get the question, and I often have the cause to think about what makes a good story. And I think I have an idea, and I have a personal opinion, but I would be remiss, and you shouldn't be surprised, if you would let me first tell you a story. When I was a kid, this seems appropriate, right? We have some amazing youth speakers coming up later. We are in a school, so here is a story about me at school. I grew up the son of a police officer in a small southern town, and that comes with a lot of embarrassments, but it also comes with a lot of perks. We'll call them perks. One of those perks was driving around in the patrol car. They're always white Crown Royals. These in particular had a brown stripe down the side with a golden star emblazoned in the passenger side door and 2 lights on top, one red, one blue. And as a kid, I remember being in this car with the buttons and the lights and the intercom and just waiting every day on the ride home from school when we would get close enough to the driveway for my dad to give me the intercom and say, go ahead, and I would just and it would make my day. I loved it so much. It's these little things. And it was magical, right? My classmates agreed. They were so in awe that I got to arrive in school in this mysterious vehicle of civil order. The vibe sort of changes in high school. It's a bigger school. Not everyone knows me. So they make up stories about the kid who arrives to school getting out of the back of a cop car because they don't tell you this, but as a civilian, even if you're family, you have to sit in the back where the criminals sit. And so what used to be a very exciting time for me became a very awkward, embarrassing, rushed time for me as I would wait for the car to pull to a stop, run out and just jam it to the front door of my high school. Same when I would get picked up. I'd wait inside, I'd see the white Crown Royal coming down the S-curve of the pickup drop-off zone, and as soon as it got there, I'd beeline, and I'd jump into that oiled leather back seat like a seal on a hot rock. And then I would stay down until I was out of view from my school. One day, school lets out at 3:30. One day, I was waiting for my mad dash, and I didn't start feeling weird until 3:45. My father is a very prompt man. I started feeling weirder at 4 o'clock. I started feeling very weird at 4:15. And then you get this feeling that sort of society teaches you to feel when your dad is a cop. And you watch TV and the kids ask you if your dad's ever been shot at. And you watch your mom try not to worry when it's too late. And so I am sitting there at 4:30, 4:45, at 5 o'clock. I'm no longer feeling weird. I am sad. I am a sad high schooler left at the pickup drop-off zone alone as all these other kids get into their normal cars, their minivans, their sedans. And then 5:15, nothing. Then 5:30, nothing. And then finally, a little after 5:30, I see the white Crown Royal coming up the S-curve. And I wait for a second, because could be another deputy, right? I wait to see his face behind the blue tinted glass, and then I see it, and then I run, and then I get in the car in the front seat this time, and he doesn't tell me to move. And then we start riding home. It's normal. It's super, super normal. Except for the white gauze, or I assume at one time it was white, around his arm. It is now red. He's asking me how my day was. I am telling him. He's asking me what's for dinner. I think Mama's making pork chops. Love your mother's pork chops. And then I just ask, what happened to your arm? Why are you so late? And he says, as he said many times before, I'm not supposed to talk about it. We're not allowed to talk about it, but you've been waiting. You deserve it. I'll tell you. And he told me. So my father had many roles in the community, and he had many roles in the police department. One of those roles was hostage negotiator. And a man had driven his truck into the middle of a cul-de-sac. He was very, very angry. And he had weapons in the truck with him. And he was keeping people in their houses and firing guns at the police and at the civilians in the house. When they couldn't approach this man without endangering civilians, they called my father. My father arrived. He walks up. He comes up to the cul-de-sac with empty hands because he has to convince this man to empty his hands as well. My father walks closer to the truck. Closer still, talking to him, the man rolling the window down only enough to get his mouth out so that he can talk to my father. My father had an ability to talk to people. When we would go to the grocery store, it was an afternoon affair because we had to say hello to everyone. Everyone had to get their story in. He knew how to talk to people and connect with them and tell them what they wanted to hear and make them feel heard. And he did that with this man as he got right up on the car. He had convinced the man to drop his weapons. The man's hands were on the steering wheel so he could see them, and they were talking. They were just talking. This was the moment my father realized that the car door was not locked. So he picked his moment, he tore the door open, and he dragged the man out. The man landed on him, specifically his arm, smashing his elbow in the ground. Don't tell your brother and sister, is how he finished that story to me. And I tell you this story because I want you to remember something about my father. He left me at school. He was prepared to leave much more in the cul-de-sac. When people ask me what makes a good story, the answer that I always give them is honesty. Not truth, not fact, but honesty. And what I mean by that is your willingness to leave yourself with another person. Is to leave yourself, even though it is risky and even though it may hurt, to give yourself to another person. Raise your hand if you live in Shenzhen. Raise your hand if you're from Shenzhen. Raise your hand if you think you might leave Shenzhen one day. Hands back up. Right. Many people in this room are classified as expats, expatriated. Patriated no more. We're not home, we're not visitors, we live here. But do we commit here? Do we treat a temporary location, right? And it is. The international lifestyle is a temporary one. That doesn't mean it's bad. We have experiences we would never get if we stayed put. It's amazing. But how many are we missing by not leaving ourselves behind for other people? How are we impacting the cul-de-sac that we are brought into? What do we leave there? What are we prepared to leave there? And so when people ask me what makes a good story, I tell them you do. Your story is good. And that's why we started Shenzhen Stories. Because we wanted to create a small space in the world where we focused on these micro moments of people's lives. And we said, that's valuable. People need to see that reflected back to them. So today we're going to hear a lot of amazing stories and a lot of amazing ideas, and I hope that that sparks in you the question of your story and the question to take to other people. What's your story? And be ready to answer it and leave yourself with that person. Because then temporary starts to feel a little bit more permanent. And I think that that's really nice. Thank you.